Some conversations are a little bit painful to have. This is one of them. Seth and I were able to talk to a nice woman named Jasmine, and unfortunately, Jasmine is just one of the latest victims of divine command theory, which results in her admitting that she would do atrocities for God. This video, by the way, is over on The Line. You can watch the full episode by clicking on the link in the description. If you're not following The Line, I encourage everyone to drop them a follow. So Jasmine is a theist all the way from Canada. Not sure what type. Jasmine says, "What skills acquired from an evangelical Christian background, characteristics left behind after conversion, do the hosts regret their evangelical backgrounds?" Well, Jasmine, welcome to The Line with Justin and Seth. It sounds like
Hello.
you're trying to ask us about our experience. Did we gather that correctly?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. And you had some questions?
Um, well, yeah, just before I go into what I think evangelicals might have as a, bonus from their backgrounds, just what you guys think of your backgrounds and what skills, like both of you are excellent speakers in your own rights, although um, different kind of format, sort of type. But I am more interested in hearing you guys first.
Mhm.
Well, I'm curious about the genesis of your question. Pardon the expression. Are you a believer in God? Are you a Christian or?
I used to be a Christian. I've converted out. I'm a neophyte Buddhist.
Okay. So in your life, does an evangelical background bring you feelings of joy, regret? Are you thankful for them? Do you have thoughts about them? I'm curious about you.
Um, I don't really come from an evangelical background specifically. I come from a mixed Christian background, but the primary Christian denomination in my area is Catholics. You can't escape the Catholics in my area. So
Oh,
there
I
is
love
quite
the
a bit of
Catholic Church. An entire culture that encourages Bible illiteracy among its population. Like, come in, we'll do the incense, we'll read a couple of sort of, puffy sounding, very esoteric words from on high, and then you go off to your beer and bingo and maybe do confession to reset the etch a sketch, have a nice day. Like, it literally, I think, is one of it's remarkable. I'm almost jealous. Like, no Bible study required. Just show up, genuflect, have a good week. So that's how I feel about Catholicism in many ways.
oh, I find Catholicism uh, very formatted. Like everything has to be precisely the way the lectures or the preaching has to be a precise way. The candles have to be a precise way. Everything has to be precise, right? Um,
Oh
it's
yeah, they make
strange,
the
but you always
Southern
know what you're getting
Baptist.
with Catholicism.
Yeah, Catholics make the Southern Baptist look like a frat party, and that's saying something. As far as I'm concerned, I took a long time to exit the faith, and part of that, a lot of it has to do with childhood indoctrination. The same people that taught me how to tie my shoes and how to ride a bike and taught me, to stay away from strangers and fed me and sheltered me and loved me and that I gave absolute trust to as a very young child. These were the same people that told me there was a Jesus in heaven and that the Bible was true and Adam and Eve and Noah and all these other stories were real. And then they placed me throughout my upbringing in a reinforcement culture where everything affirmed what they had said. It was Christian friends, Christian music, Christian apparel, Christian school, Christian church, Christian everything, insulating me and isolating me from the outside world. On top of that, there was this threat. You don't want to anger God. You don't want to go to hell, right? All of these reinforcers are in place. And so when I hear some atheists go hard at those who took a long time to bust out of the faith, I think they're missing it. Indoctrination, when you bake that stuff in, a lot of times it takes a long time to get there, to deconstruct. And when I finally decided to do my own thinking on this stuff when I was in my 30s, and I realized there was no there, I beat myself up. How stupid could you be? Balaam argued with his donkey. His donkey spoke Hebrew. Seth, what's the matter with you? You know, I'm sorry, a guy built a boat housing the world's animals that floated for a year with, I it's just how a woman, a young girl was conceived to save a super baby via ghost sex so that the offspring could be turned into a bloody meat pinata to save us from the hell that he created. I literally went back and thought, how did I believe this for so long? And I beat myself up for being so dumb and for wasting so much time. And it took me a few years to begin to give myself some grace and see the upside. And this is the answer to your question. I learned to give myself some grace for being human and for being indoctrinated. And then I gave myself credit for finally saying, fuck it, I'm going to figure this out. Whether it's true or not, whatever the consequences, whatever friends or family I lose, whether I get fired from my job, whatever happens in my life, I got to know. I give myself credit for finally taking that step. On the other side of my religious faith, I have found that 30 years in Christianity has made me much more effective in speaking about not just the Bible and the verses and the dogmas and the mission statements and the churches and the denominations, but the culture at large, Christians at large. And sometimes that means even being more charitable. While some people will write off Christians as they're all this or they're all that, I'll say, you know what? I wasn't an idiot when I was a Christian. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't a Nazi. I wasn't hateful. I wasn't all these things. I was just brainwashed. I was a good person trying to do it right. And so my evangelical past has actually made me a better activist in my own life. So while I do have regrets, at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I've managed to take that bug and make it a feature. That's my long answer to the short question. Sorry, Justin, but that's what I got.
No, it's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
I mean, I've always felt like I've mostly agreed with Seth's position here. I don't have any ill will towards my time as a Christian, and I certainly, the people that I met in the church, I still adore them. I think they're amazing people. The problem I have is I know that my church experience isn't identical to everybody else's. There's a lot of people that went through church and they were harassed. They were told that they had to hate themselves because they love somebody of the same sex, that they were told that they were created wrong and sinful and dirty and God hates them. That's why he has to light them on fire for all of eternity. I now, from my vantage point now, doing what I do, I know people, many people who have had horrible experiences in the church. So while I can certainly tell you that I'm grateful for going to Bible college and seminary and for my time in Christianity, it breaks my heart to know that the church has done so much evil, even if it didn't do evil to me.
Did you both come out of progressive branches of Christianity, or was it more conservative for you both?
Mixed for me.
I mean, Dad was ex-Lutheran, Mom was hardcore Pentecostal. I went to a Southern Baptist school. So I mean, we sort of had 31 flavors. We were Bible literalist. I mean, it was pretty conservative. It was Christian nationalist. There was an Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and Esther and King Herod and, all of the book of Revelation and the trumpet shall sound and hell was a real place. Depart from me, you who are cursed, into a lake of everlasting fire. And we had our fire and brimstone sermons. And, I think Justin's right. One of the more tragic things is, well, people will often say, well, why can't you just let people believe what they want to believe? Why do you have to be such a pain in the ass about this stuff? And I always reply, well, if religion was benign and it didn't ripple out, it didn't become actionable, I wouldn't have as much of a problem. I mean, I think, is it true is a question that we should all be promoting and asking. I don't think it's our job to keep other people comfortable. I think if it's an nonsensical or wrong belief, it should be challenged whenever possible. But by design, someone's belief system will ripple out. It affects how they raise their kids, indoctrination. It affects how they operate in their culture. It affects how they vote. which explains the rise of Christian nationalism, Project 2025, the assault on democracy and decency, Zionism when it comes to foreign policy with Israel and Netanyahu's genocide in Palestine, informed so often by religious thinking. And so it is not a benign thing. It's not a happy clappy, well, let people just believe what they want to believe, because it's never that simple. And I think it's important for us to come forward and say, yes, it is a community. Yes, it is an identity. Yes, there are lovely people who are religious. The dogma itself, the scriptures, and the religion itself, those are fair game because so often they are a net negative. And I think the world would be better off without superstition.
Um, well, I think superstition just will crop up from time to time. Everybody has their lucky socks or whatever. But my thoughts go to my in-laws who are very fundamentalist. They're actually Zionists and Southern Baptists, and I've been questioning sending my child to them, even though my son isn't Christian and I'm no longer Christian. How do I should I still respect tell them to attend their services?
Well, wait. What are you nervous about
How do you
happening?
approach?
Like if your child goes there on and you're not there to supervise, what are you nervous about? What do you think might happen? What are your fears?
Well, like I said, they're both they're very Southern Baptisty fundamentalist Zionists, and the variety of Christianity you guys got down there is just it's so much different because it's so intertwined with politics and world affairs, whereas as this our variety of Christianity could be considered quaint, for lack of a better word.
But not with your parents, not if they're Zionists.
Well, no, this is the in-laws' parents, my son's grandparents.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I defer
Yeah,
to Justin. What do you
Jasmine.
Yeah,
think, brother?
sure.
I mean,
So
when you've got family members in play who may have an agenda, and you've got a vulnerable kid in the mix, what are your thoughts?
here's my impression. I think kids are smart. I spent a lot of years working with kids in ministry and whatnot. I think kids are way smarter than we give them credit for. Sometimes we think like if you tell a kid something, they're just automatically going to believe it. That's not always the truth. Sometimes they accept it only because they've never heard a counter argument for it, right? But if you've got a child who's like somebody's attempting to indoctrinate them in a religion, as long as you provide like adequate counterpoints to the indoctrination that they're learning, I mean, kids are smart. They usually go with what makes the most sense. And the reality is, when you live in a region that is, generally religious, like you're never going to be able to shield them from it, right? You have to let them experience it and just hope that you give them the tools they need to sort through the nonsense, hopefully sooner rather than later. It's kind of like you can never tell your child who to date. You can't date them. You're like, I'm going to date them even harder because you don't want me to. So it's like you have to give your child a little bit of room to learn and think through things on their own. And I think if you do that, they'll end up on top eventually. That being said, I get it. I understand the fear because like if you don't want them to be indoctrinated into something dangerous, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to shield them. But personally, I think kids are super smart. The best questions I ever got teaching the Bible came from kids. They're way more perceptive, way more critical than most adults. And if you provide them with the information they need, I think they typically come out to the most logical conclusions sometimes, not all the time.
Justin, do you feel like that one of her fears is as much or more than a dogma issue, a boundary violation? Like, what happens if
Oh,
somebody on the family tree says, "Oh, we're blood relatives. Heaven and hell are in the balance." Hey, you know what? Now that mom's not around, let me tell you, whoa, you sure want to accept Jesus because I mean, I've gotten emails from people who like my parents are trying to brainwash my kid when I'm not around, and they sneaking them off the church. I mean, I when I hear that, I wonder about a boundary violation aspect to the problem.
that's such a fair aspect of it because if you lay down ground rules for your children or those that are in your care and people are continually violating those ground rules, then certainly that means that they're violating your trust. They're violating the relationship that you have with somebody, right? And certainly, I would call into question if they were violating those boundaries, whether or not they're even good actors and should be trusted in the first place. I really get that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know immediately what I would respond to it with. You know what I mean? I've not been placed in that situation yet.
Well, how about like I know Justin, you have at least one child. I don't know, Steph, if you do, but would you teach Christianity of any form to your children?
I wouldn't, and I'm in an interesting position where I'm not sure it would matter. My son is very high on the autism spectrum, and I don't think the abstract concepts of religion are really going to be a problem for him down the road. And if he does have a developmental arc, like he moves lower down on the autism spectrum, typically people that are on the spectrum are like really good at hyper focusing on logical ends. So like that's not the type of personality I might be worried about. But the caveat is sometimes people who get really good at focusing on things, they end up getting it. They're the most dangerous aspects of the religion they fall into, because then they can't separate. Like if this thing is true, then by logical extension, there's like the limits become pretty crazy what they'll adhere to. That's why you get like people who are willing to unalive their children because they think God told them to. And, so I don't know. It's a tough one. And I don't worry about it specifically for my child, but I certainly could understand why generally that would be a concern.
I think if it was me, I would teach them teach them the tenets of all the world's major religions, right? I mean, I was taught one, and then I was taught to dismiss, mock, or fear all the others. I didn't know anything about them, right? I knew evolution was crazy. I'd never read Darwin's On the Origin of Species. I'd never gone to an actual evolution class. My science classes were theology classes inside a Christian school, right? So, I mean, the isolation factor where you teach one thing is the problem. But I get a lot of correspondence from people, and they were like, well, I was raised in a fundy household. Then I went off to college and I took my first comparative religions class. And they were like, all right, here's Christianity, and here's its deity, and here's its dogma, and here's its holy book, and here's its paradise, and here's its pain, and all of its tenets. And then they go to Islam, and then they go to Hinduism, and then they go to Jainism, and then they go somewhere else, right? And people have an epiphany, and they're like, "Wow, wait a minute." Forgive if you saw me with Forrest the other day. I made the same analogy, but it's almost like going to a Mexican restaurant. You're like, I would like a taco. What's on a taco? You got a tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, tomato. Okay, well, that's fine. I'll take a tostada instead. What's on that? We got a tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, tomato. Okay, well, I'm going to go get some nachos. What's in that? Well, you got tortillas, meat, lettuce, cheese, and tomato. You just have taken the ingredients and assembled them in a different way. And I think when you see the religions that are you present them side by side in the context of, well, where do they come from? And do we know? And what was borrowed? And then blah, blah, blah. I think the light bulb of epiphany comes a lot faster, and people really begin to say, hey, wait a minute. Dr. John Loftus, he's not a doctor actually, but he's an educated man and a seminary graduate. John Loftus wrote the book called The Outsider Test for Faith, where you start to use critical thinking skills about your own faith and the way that you use them about others. And you go back and you just sort of examine everything. I would teach my kid, here's what the world religions, at least the major ones, say and believe, just to sort of inoculate them and educate them about how all this works. And then I think if they were properly taught how to think, they will connect those dots in a way that reveals, yes, they are all man made and they are all mythology. That's my imperfect answer to your question.
Um, well,
I put
again,
Jasmine to
it
sleep.
kind of
So
your stuff kind of reminded me of my time in college. Was actually the time I was most religious. Um, Oddly enough, I didn't study Bible. I studied biology, and biology didn't shake my at the time my faith. And especially because again the area around the Catholics kind of have a fundamental a hand in developing the theory of evolution, but um, college did not shake my faith at all at the time. The only thing that seems to be left behind for me is kind of this divine command theory I can't shake.
Wait, you're not a Christian, but you hold to divine command theory?
Yeah, I know it's odd. Like, I keep thinking about it. If God said to, well, yeet baby off a cliff, if I was convinced I wasn't crazy and that was God, instant obedience, without question.
How do you know that God's not testing you to see if you do the right thing?
Oh God, I wouldn't know. But like I said, I still can't shake
That's
it
the
that
problem.
religion requires obedience regardless if there's a God concept or not.
But how do you know that God should be followed? How do you know he's even good? What if he's just a cosmic dictator and wants to see babies yeeted off cliffs?
You don't, but is it just a case of might versus might makes right? It doesn't matter if it's good, neutral, or evil. It's a
Right,
god or a goddess or whatever. So yeet baby.
but what we're suggesting, at least what I'm suggesting, is maybe might doesn't make right. Can something that is more powerful than everything else just be a cosmic asshole? How do you know that the God you believe in is actually good rather than assuming it's good?
um, yeah, that's the question. But the question,
Right?
it's still like, why can't I shake that? Like this obedience thing. Just
Because
do it.
it's
Even in Buddhism,
it's
there's a thing where it doesn't matter if you understand the practices. You just do the practices till you get it and become enlightened. So there's this obedience
mhm.
that doesn't seem to be shaken.
Because it's been programmed into you. It's
Just
part
do it.
of your yeah, right? But that's why we're here. We're here to look at that and say, listen, this is programming, and we can deprogram it. You don't have to do this anymore. The logical extent of divine command theory can lead to tragic things, as we brought up earlier. It could bring you to the point where you're executing your own children. But I can push it further. And I'm not gonna. I certainly don't want to cook you on this because you're such a nice person. But I do this example quite often. Anyone watching from my channel knows what I'm gonna say. You've already said that if God told you to yeet a baby off a cliff, you think it would be right to yeet the baby off the cliff. So if God said, I need you to, I don't know, yeet an entire orphanage off the cliff, would it be right to yeet the orphanage off the cliff?
Um, then that's getting harder. Obviously, the more you up the stakes, the harder it is to
Right.
push.
But in divine command theory, there is no limit. You can't draw the line between one baby being yeeted and a whole orphanage being yeeted. That line is being drawn by your own internal subjective thinking, not by God. So now it's catch-22. You have to decide, is God's divine command theory correct? Or am I actually deciding what is the limit of right and wrong? And the reality is most of us do it ourselves. We just attribute it to God. So if you do truly believe in divine command theory, that means if God tells you to yeet the entire orphanage, you have to yeet the entire orphanage, correct?
Yeah.
Right. And if God says,
Without
after
question, too.
without question, right? And after you yeet the entire orphanage off the cliff, I want you to scrape up what's left of the babies and turn them into meat patties and have them for lunch. The right thing to do is to have the baby meat patties, isn't it?
Again, this
That's right.
strange.
Because there's no limit. Don't worry, I'm not going to force it out of you,
Yeah.
Jasmine. You're nice. But you and I both know the answer to the question. With divine command theory, there is no limit. That's the problem with divine command theory. There's nothing you could not justify once you go to divine command theory. But the reality is, as we're going through these steps, your brain is slowly starting to recognize, well, some of this feels more wrong than others, right? But that's you. That's your own internal dialogue trying to figure out where the line of right and wrong is. And that's where I would step in and say, yeah, human beings are probably better at deciding like where that line is, even though we've really fucked it up in the past. But if divine command theory is true, we really don't have a line at all. There is no line at all, none. Right. But Seth, what's your take?
I'm first of all, to hear the word yeet in the middle of such a sobering conversation about throwing, it's like I just picture the Spartans, when they took the imperfect children up to them and threw them. They're like yeet and threw them off. It's just such an odd conflict of language in my head. But okay, the verb totally works. I myself am troubled. I'm not coming after you, Jasmine, but I heard what I heard, and this may not be what you said. What I heard was, if you heard a voice in your head tell you to kill your kid, you would do it. Tell me I heard that wrong?
Not well. Kill my kid. That's a whole other ball of wax. But
No. You throw
I
the
often
child
think of
off the cliff. That child dies. You have killed the child. That's fair, isn't it?
yes, of course.
Okay, well, can you see how that would be an alarming thing for me and for Justin and for the people in our viewing audience to hear? I don't, in my mind, believe you would ever harm your child. I don't. I don't think. I think what you're going through is probably more of a cerebral exercise, and so you're working it out. If you had a divine command and there's baggage there and whatnot, I really think you would be. We always talk about what Abraham was ordered to execute Isaac as an act of obedience. And I think you would do what Christopher Hitchens said he would do. I think you would tell God, fuck off. Like hell no, I would never harm my child. And I'm convinced in my mind that you would do that. And I don't think I'm being too generous, right? I mean, you would give anything and everything to protect your kid, right, Jasmine?
Yeah, I mean, it is a cerebral exercise, but
But
um,
why the pause?
I
Why
don't
the
know.
asterisk? Because I think when the chips are down, what? Where would Justin's right? If the edict came down from on high, and let's say it was some sort of a cosmic other deity, wizard, father, God, said, kill your kid as an act of obedience, that deity has then revealed herself, itself to be a deity not worth obeying. You want me to murder my kid? Hell no. Fuck off. Right? We know that that is not a deity that would be worthy of our allegiance, obedience, or worship. So we can make that moral decision in our minds and we can do what we think is the moral thing to do. And I believe you would do that in a pinch. I certainly do hope so, but your pause concerns me a little bit, Jasmine.
Well, again, maybe this is how deep the Abrahamic, because they call it the Abrahamic religions, how deep the thinking or the training or whatever you want to call it goes. Yeah, because everything is based off that Abrahamic, you sack your kid kind of thing.
It's written down. Fine. It's mythology, much of it borrowed, all of it anonymously written about a deity that commanded one of his own children to kill one of his own children. So that and $5, morally, that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You have an evolved ethical center. You know that the murder of a child is wrong. And I would be horrified to think that your child would ever hear this conversation and notice the pause in your answer when what that child needs is every assurance that, hell no, I will do nothing but protect my kid, because it's the moral thing to do. I wouldn't worry about what some unproven or disproven cosmic other has to say about it. You don't need that, right? You've got everything you need to make the moral choice right here and right here. So own it, enjoy it, participate in it, celebrate it. It belongs to you.
Uh, okay, I think that's all my questions. It was interesting exploring morality, especially since you guys came from a Christian background. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, thanks for calling in, Jasmine. I realize that towards the end of the conversation, we touched on some very difficult topics, but we're not doing it to beat up on you. I genuinely just want you to be able to think through some of the illogical extents of your position, because I think Seth and I both agree. You seem like a caring individual who is truly looking for what is true and right, and we hope that you're in a good position and moving towards even better position. Oh, I think she dropped. But
Yep. Thank you,
you know what?
Jasmine.
It hurts me to hear what sounds like very kind, nice people admit that they would do horrific acts for God.